I usually don't stay in places like that. Cheap roadside motels, the kind with flickering neon signs and maybe half a dozen working rooms. You know the type. The kind of place you drive past without even thinking. But that night, I didn't have a choice. I'd spent the entire day in back-to-back meetings across 2 states. Everything ran late, hours later than it should have. By the time I got back on the highway, it was nearly midnight, and I still had a 3-hour drive ahead of me. At first, I thought I could push through, turn up the radio, roll down the windows, stop for some gas station coffee. But an hour into the drive, my eyelids were dropping without permission. Not once or twice, over and over. It wasn't safe. I took the next exit I saw with a glowing vacancy sign. The motel was everything you'd expect. Cracked asphalt in the parking lot, dim yellow lights barely illuminating the doors. The front office smelled like mildew through the glass. The night clerk barely looked up to say cash only when I tried handing him a credit card. He slid a real metal key across the counter. Not a card. Room 306. I parked around the side near the end of the row. There was no deadbolt, just a cheap chain lock on the inside. The carpet smelled damp. The bedspread looked clean enough, at least in the dim light. I was too tired to care. I dropped my suitcase on a chair, kicked off my shoes, and laid down fully clothed. I just needed a few hours of sleep. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was an antique-looking mirror. Across the wall opposite the bed. The frame was cracked at the edges, warped, like it was bowing inward slightly. I don't know why it bothered me immediately. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was instinct. But something about it felt wrong. Still, I closed my eyes, telling myself not to be ridiculous. You hear stories sometimes. People having strange experiences, unexplained moments they can't explain away. But nothing like that had ever happened to me. At least, not until that night. Even with my eyes closed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not just the normal creepiness of a mirror in a dark room, something deeper, primal. I turned onto my side, facing the opposite wall, trying to ignore it. The feeling stayed. I opened my eyes just a sliver and caught the mirror from the corner of my vision. My reflection was there, but it wasn't right. It was delayed. Just by a fraction of a second, but enough that I knew something was wrong. I shifted slightly under the covers. The reflection copied me, a beat too late. A cold, creeping realization trickled down my spine. I sat up fully in bed, staring directly at the mirror now. I waved my hand. Again, the reflection hesitated, barely but unmistakably, before following. And then it smiled. I didn't. I sat there, frozen as my reflection, my own face, smiled at me with an expression I wasn't making. And then, while I stayed perfectly still, it lifted its hand and waved. Slow, mocking, almost playful. I was out of the bed in seconds, fumbling with my shoes, my keys, my bag. As I wrenched open the door, I dared one final glance back at the mirror. The reflection was standing now. It wasn't moving toward me, but it was closer to the surface somehow, still smiling that faint, unnatural smile. I slammed the door behind me and sprinted to my car. I drove the rest of the way home that night, fighting exhaustion, running purely on adrenaline. When I finally made it home, sometime after dawn, I told my wife what happened. She laughed, said I was delirious from lack of sleep, that my brain probably filled in the blanks like a waking dream. Maybe she's right. Maybe. But even now, after all this time, I still get that uneasy feeling whenever I walk past a mirror. That instinct to glance twice. To check. Just to make sure the person looking back is really me. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more true stories, and if this one creeped you out, drop a like. It helps a lot.